Hello, everybody, and welcome to A Better Way of Life. It's Friday again. Another week has disappeared, gone past, expired, and we're back to bring you more of our kind of magazine-style show to take a look at what's happening in the world. Marianne, how's your week been?
I'm in London at the moment, so I had an early morning. I went to pick up somebody. That sounds really dodgy.
Try that again, shall we?
There's somebody that I met on LinkedIn through work who
Yes.
I've gone really red.
Still sounding bad. But...
There's somebody that you met as well.
Yes.
On here, who we were going to do some work for, but because of the way that things are panning out in America, things aren't panning out. But anyway, John was coming over for the business show, the expo in London next week. So he was going to come over anyway. So he's come over for 2 weeks. So I picked him up this morning. So he's just gone to do a few things. He's going to come and see the family. And then next week we're doing the show, which should be fun.
Yeah.
It'll be good.
And we had a great conversation last night, which we can't say too much about at this moment in time.
I know, it's very exciting.
But it was very exciting, and it's all to do with learning and teaching and training and all of those wonderful things in education, which leads us nicely onto our guest today. We are introducing Panos, who is from LearnWorlds. So thank you for joining us, Panos.
Hi, Graham. Hi, Marianne. Nice to be here.
Nice to meet you too, sir. Now, for our audience, explain who you are, sir, and a little bit about what it is that LearnWorlds does.
I'm a former educator and computer scientist, and now I'm the co-founder and CEO of LearnWorlds, which is an online platform for creating and selling online courses. That's what we do around here.
Fantastic. Why get into that world? What sort of fascinated you about the world of learning? And
well, yeah. We've been doing that for many years. Like with first of all, learning is kind of my family business, both my and my co-founders. I'm a third generation teacher. All three of us are sons of educators coming through the public school system. We've studied computer science together. And as we were finishing our studies, we were really, really excited by the potential of enhancing education through technology. We're not the only ones. We know that e-learning was something that always, like a revolution, always 5 years in the future. But we started postgraduate studies in educational technology back in 1999. Essentially, that's when we built our very first learning management system. The web was coming along, video was becoming so much more affordable and fast. We could web cameras and some online video. So it was really, really a very exciting time to start thinking about how we can use technology at the service of educators, at the service of teaching. And since then, we built numerous e-learning applications, as being in the academia as part of research projects. But also, we always had in mind how we can build a business around this, like bringing our expertise together. We were always kind of dissatisfied by the state of e-learning that existed out there in the industry, what people had at their hands. In the university, we were seeing so much exciting, so much potential, so much amazing innovation, but this wasn't always reaching the real users and the real students out there. So when we got the chance, after completing our PhD studies, after working as developers or programmers in other works, we got together at the end of 2011 and we said, okay, let's try to bring in our expertise and start building something that people can actually use today. When we did that, it was the era that the MOOCs were coming along, Udemy and Coursera and all this belief that we would be able to go out and learn anything from the best teachers out there for free. That was like it was really a kind of a revolutionary state of e-learning. And then at that point, we started designing our platform and we started thinking about how we can help the professional trainers, the small guys, the small businesses, the individual trainer that would like to teach online but doesn't have the means to create his or her own platform and cannot be a part of a mega marketplace like a Udemy or a Coursera. So we started thinking about how we can create a platform that can function as the Shopify for online courses for the small guy, to allow him to reach the full potential of his training and reach a global audience, perhaps with his training, with his skills, with the kind of expertise that he or she is sharing. That's how we started.
It's fantastic.
I love hearing it when it's, as soon as I hear that somebody has been a teacher or was, I've got a whole different respect for what I know that is going to come from that. Do I call it e-learning? I didn't call it that.
Well, I was going to ask the question about that. How do you feel?
It's a swear word to me.
Well, I was going to say, how do you feel about the term e-learning? Because it's a bit like when I used to work in assistive technology, I really disliked the term assistive technology. I understood why that term was used, right? But for me, it was just good technology. It was technology that everybody should be using. I didn't like the fact that it kind of got badged up for people with disabilities, etc. I mean, e-learning, how do you feel about that term? Because in a lot of areas, it's got a really bad rap.
It has. I guess it's kind of. I've seen worse terms to start from there. Like I'm an old guy. I started my PhDs in computer-assisted assessment. It was we were using back then terms like CBT, computer-based training. You know, it was the era of the CD-ROMs. I'm giving away my age now. You know, the CD-ROMs and then later the DVDs. So there is all this terminology and all this lingo. We are now close to 2026. Like, do we really need to explain that people use technology to enhance their work? So do we really need this E in front of the learning? And you've probably seen all the numerous debates, whether there's a dash between, whether it's like whether it's like a small letter or a big letter or whatever. So it's crazy. But we probably don't even use it internally that much anymore. We call it online learning. Because people are still much more online, which doesn't necessarily describe whether it's self-paced or whether it's live or hybrid, but still the majority or the largest distribution, I guess, channel of learning tends to be online. So I guess we're past e-learning, but also we're trying not to be stuck into the terms. Our customers have so diverse backgrounds. They may be doing the exact same thing, but they describe what they do in so different terms that we try not to be boxed or bothered by terms like that. We try to say, okay, let's see how we help you. Let's see what you're doing today. How do you connect with your students, trainees, customers, audience, followers? Like, who are these people? How we can help you make the best out of this connection and have real impact at the lives of the people who follow your whatever it is that you're doing.
Well, do you know what I do love though is that your whole attitude, and Graham and I have spoken to lots of people and I've been to lots of shows, and the amount of online e-learning, distance learning, whatever you want to call it, is in abundance. You know, I went to the World of Learning the other week, and there was just lots of them. I go to the care shows, there's lots of them. I'm sure next week when I go to the show, there'll be lots of them. And it's funny because I have a different level of respect when I hear that an educator goes in to it and people talk about it in a different way, other than other people, other businesses where I've heard where they are a training business, but primarily educating isn't what they're there for. It's to distribute en masse lots of courses, and they don't have a clue about the education bit. So for me, I'm always a bit happier when I hear what's underneath it all. And I'm probably more open to want to know more, you know, and we've spoken before, because I can see it's that what you're saying is, the world's changed and we've had to do this because we have had to, but actually, can we do it so that it can replicate as best it would what you would have in a classroom, but also enhancing it as well?
I really believe now we have the potential of doing so much better. We've all been through the traditional classroom factory experience where you're supposed to come in and say, like that's the predominant model for the last 150 years or more. People coming as tabula rasa in a classroom. The teacher comes in, dumps some kind of knowledge on you, and then you go out as a full citizen, productive. You go out into production. And sometimes we tend to forget that this is also an industrial kind of capitalist model that was trying to create some kind of mass education to people who were really left out of economy, society, and everything else. And that was the most, I guess, efficient and effective that technology that society could produce 150 years ago. But what is the equivalent today? How we can use the means that we have at our disposal? So we're not starting with a kind of let's go back to our roots and let's replicate the amazing experiences that we had as students and young scientists in a classroom or an amphitheater. But there is so much value there. And there is so much value in this genuine connection, genuine problem solving and curiosity, and the safe space that allows you to not just be connected with some amount of knowledge or consume some knowledge, because there are other ways to do that now, more efficient ways. What were the unique things that worked when we were in a university setting, or when we're in an amazing workshop? How were we connected with some teachers that really affected us as people and as individuals, and really touched us in some cases? And I believe technology can help us a lot in making this much more inclusive and much more impactful, and replicate it 1,000 times over. Because right now, I don't think we have the means of creating these unique connections. We have to think about accessibility. We have to think about scale. We have to think about how we can enhance and augment the limited time and attention that both the teacher and the student have, and maximize the potential out of there. And we know, like, most of our customers are coming from places where learning and instructional design are not the most important thing. They might have to run a business. They might have to certify people at scale. But is there something that we can do to make them think a bit deeper about the learning experience and about their outcome? In some cases, they're coming from a purely e-commerce point of view. But once they see that quality also pays off, and the kind of experience that you can create if you are more thoughtful, if you're taking more into consideration the kind of learning path and learning experience that you can create, that this also is effective, then they really start thinking more about this. And we love it very much when we get people who weren't normally thinking about this and start looking at things a bit more with through our own lens. That's I guess what we're trying to support with our platform and with the team and the help that we're giving to our customers.
A question that came from a conversation that I had with someone from our network this morning, who is involved in education and training, etc. And they said to me, I've been with an e-learning provider, online provider, for the last 4 years. Personally, I completely struggled with it because we are competing with people chucking out courses in the same arena as us, £10, £20 at a time. We're just not seeing any sales. We're just not getting anything through the door. It's just not working for us. What are people like that doing wrong, in your opinion?
I think what they are doing wrong is, or like I can't generalize, but one of the things that we've seen in most cases gone wrong is competing on the content, on the volume of the content, and even in some cases competing on the price. This is a race to the bottom. You can't win that, especially now with AI. Even if somebody creates better, cheaper content as a human, they will also be replaced by AI slop. What cannot be though replicated is caring, is the connection, is the attention, and this is where a teacher, a trainer, an expert, an author, a public figure, a thought leader in their space, they can make a difference by creating their own communities, by creating their own audience, showing real care, which I understand it's not truly scalable across thousands of people, and really being putting value into the individual learning journey and the transformation of every one of their students. We've seen, and this is also at the root of how LearnWorlds started. Already we were seeing back 10 years ago that purely competing on the content is a losing proposition. Already in the huge marketplaces, there were dozens or hundreds of thousands of online courses about everything, and the prices were increasingly coming down. Something that started to be sold at $200 was $9.95 after a few months. So how can you make up for that? You try to just produce more slop and just try to dupe more students into making a single purchase, but then they go in and they really are left with nothing, with a very subpar experience where they just consume a couple of dodgy videos, or they're being thrown a couple of PDFs or checklists. That's not the real connection. And with LearnWorlds, we try to go the other way, creating actually a world of learning. That's also kind of the concept behind the name, where you're not just interacting with some content. You could do that in Wikipedia or YouTube or an LLM today. But what also do you need? You need a teacher, somebody who will guide you. You need a coach. We are forgetting that a course comes from a path. You need a guide to go through some paths in your life, and also have a community of peer people who are not the people sitting next to you in your classroom or the university cafeteria, but they are in it with more or less same reasons and objectives as you, and they want to compete with you, they want to get help, they want to help you out. So this is creating these unique experiences we believe, the way to go, and this is where our most successful customers are succeeding. Not by creating more content, cheaper content, faster content, more shallow content, more easy to consume, but investing in depth, investing in care, investing in creating more difficult online courses that will require more attention and create more space for this attention, but also they will be able to demand a premium price for the effort that they're putting in, because they also believe more in the end result, that it will be impactful for the person who is receiving this kind of treatment. So it's kind of going against the current, and this is where we do believe that students still have a huge, even more important role to play now. They will have to be better curators and filters, act as filters for the abundance of information and slop that is out there, and act as coaches and guides and mentors and tutors to the people who will be going through these learning and transformation experiences.
Going on from that, what would your advice be for somebody that's wanting to do an online course? So bearing in mind they've got to think about what their budget is as well. And we've all been guilty of it. You know, I know many people that have, I know that what I offer. And so exactly as you said, and we had a conversation last night about this, I never wanted to compete with the businesses that were just in it to put mass. Mine never was that. I do what I do. I love teaching people to teach. It's what I'm passionate about. Yes, I do care training as well. But in terms of putting that on a platform that I'd really want to do well, that's what I've stuck to. And people say, but you could just put more on there. And I said, what work goes in? to doing it, not just the content to put in there, but the whole, if I'm going to offer the next level up, I can teach it for somebody else, for another company easily. I could walk tomorrow and do that. But if I'm going to invest in that, I've then got to be sure that that investment of time and money, and all of the internal quality assurance, all of that stuff that goes on that people often don't know about, am I going to get enough customers back? Am I going to get enough customers to make it worth it? And I've decided, no, I don't want to do that. And so the issue I've often had, and I know many other people, and I think the person that Graham was talking about as well, was when you are competing against those other people, I won't change on that. But if you were a customer, what would you advise that somebody looked for? Because I've been stung before and gone, this is terrible, before I got into doing what I do. And that's probably what fuels me doing it, how I do it, and advising people. Because I've done webinars saying to people, before you buy, could you listen to, or even come and ask me, before you buy, you don't even have to buy off me. This is what you need to look for. So how would you advise somebody to what to look for, that cheapest isn't best? It might tick a box.
Things are getting much better now, and trainers have so much experience, more experience now. There are so many examples out there. These were discussions that for us were very difficult 8 or 10 years ago. We had to explain what an online course is and what had to explain all these things and how to set up a business model. And but now, luckily, there are so many experienced people out there and so many examples that people can emulate. Usually, 2 are the main pillars for having a successful online business: being able to create the content and being able to create the audience. So if somebody has one of the 2, they already have, if they have 2 out of 2, they can start selling online in a day. If they have 1 out of 2,
someone like me, that does what I do, I already had successfully had been teaching it. COVID happened and kind of blew everything up. So someone like me would be ideal as
I think it's
trainer.
great because you're already starting with so much. You already have your knowledge. You already have your notes. You already have your teaching notes. You have presentations. You have everything. For people who were mostly active in teaching in the physical space, in a real classroom, it will take some learning of the new medium and what are the tropes and I guess the tips and tricks of the new medium. So what we say sometimes to people is, don't get your usual 45-minute presentation that you are teaching, in universities and classrooms and company events and workshops and stuff like that, and try to create a 45-minute online video. You will just kill people by video or by PowerPoint. You have to be more efficient and you have to be smarter and you have to chop it up in 12 4-minute videos that will be so much easier for you to produce, so much easier for you to repurpose, so much easier for you to recombine for the next customer who will have slightly different needs. And now with AI, it's going to be so much easier for you to get the transcripts of the things that you're already saying and convert them into ebooks, into flashcards, into a podcast, into anything else. So more or less AI now, not generating, but repurposing the things that we already know. You're an expert in your field. You have done this thousands of times or hundreds of times. You have a body of knowledge. Other people start from a book that they have written. Others start from notes. Others start from scribbled things on a notepad. And it's so much easier now to give some structure into that and get them in one form, ideally multiple formats, because we're talking about multimedia and neurodivergence and people having different learning styles. So there's not one thing that succeeds. Even for the same person, at one point, you might want to simply sit back and watch a video. At the next point, you might want to jump into a more extensive simulation or some kind of problem solving. So this first issue is more or less much closer to being solved with some AI, but you also need to build in the audience. And again, there, if you are lucky, you are starting in already with a clientele. you are already doing some business, you have customers, you are training, that's an amazing starting point. If not, must be something for you. You are posting online in a community. You may be running your own community. You may be running your podcast, or you have to think about how you can approach these people that are close to what you start to do. And also, we are very lucky now that you don't even have to do the full investment. A few years back, launching an online school was a 50K investment. You have to pay people to set up your website, to purchase technology, purchase plugins, pay a developer, pay a designer, pay some kind of assistant. Now, with an all-in-one platform, we've seen people go up and selling online courses within a single day, because they have
that for me, again, we talked about this last night, and I said, for me, it's music to my ears, because there's so many, I say little people, I'm small but mighty, little people who, that's not why they want to do it. You know what I mean? They don't necessarily have that money behind them, but they've got that passion. And unfortunately, as you said, great word slop, unfortunately, what had been winning was that people that had that money to invest weren't investing in education. It was just investing in that business, just to be able to, to make some money from it. So for me, it's really wonderful hearing that is possible, and the more conversations we're having about it. And I mean, now, I was on the CPD podcast, and they asked me on there, because obviously they get people that have written courses. Some are better than others, to say what advice I would give. And one of mine would be that I do think before anybody does enter into wanting to do any kind of teaching, or even if it is to put it onto an online platform, it sounds like I'm trying to sell what I do here. It doesn't matter whether people do it with me or not. Just to have an understanding about the teaching and learning cycle, about different learning styles. Because if you don't, I fail to see how somebody can do it that well. And, we've talked about this quite a lot. You've got a lot of speakers and a lot of coaches that say they're training, and I'm like, you're not.
This is where I tell her off, by the way, because yes, they should do it with you, because you're the best. You're the best person.
I am the best. I am. And I do genuinely, if anybody watched the podcast that I was on, I do genuinely believe it, because even people who come to me that say, I've got a course, I've got an idea, I'm knowledgeable in my sector. There's some people, unfortunately, who have an idea of making money, that go into AI and then write a course. They're the ones that are often deluded to think that they can do it right. And yet there's other people that say, there's this thing that I know a lot about, and actually I now want to teach it to other people. Can you help me? Which is wonderful, because I can work with them. But I still sort of, when I get to that, we're sort of working at it, that I've tried if you are going to train people, learn to. That doesn't seem to work, because I think a lot of people just think that it is, you just get up and you talk to people and that's teaching.
It doesn't work. And we know now why it doesn't work, right? We've had such great informed conversations like this one with you today, Panos, over the recent time. And sitting here as a marketer and a salesperson, the reason that nobody is interested, right, at the outset of learning how to train, is because there is no direct, they do not now see at the moment any direct correlation between that and making money. That's why they don't want to do it, right? So what we've started to do by turning that whole thing around is absolutely the right thing. And picking up on your point, Panos, what I heard there with your last response was that there is a huge amount of this that is sales and marketing based. How you market your business, your online business, how you market your ability to teach people is fundamental. But we know even with that, people still want to go for the cheapest option. but they won't go for the cheapest option if they buy into you as an educator and if they buy into trust.
Totally. When I get people referred to me, they never question what I charge.
Exactly.
Never.
So,
Never.
so the first thing, I think probably where most people are going wrong, and this I've seen this applying across so many sectors at the moment, where most people are going wrong is that they don't build their community first. What they do is they try and sell what they're doing out there, and they have got no relationship with anybody that they're selling to, and therefore everybody's like, yeah, but I can get it over there for 50 quid, right? And they're not even going to look at the difference because they don't know what the difference is.
No, and I think what you've seen with me is I've had numerous people try to give me advice who don't really know anything about me. Will say, "Are you not going to give it up yet? You know, you're not making your millions yet." I said, "Well, never was necessarily going to be that." But exactly what you're saying is they don't see that it doesn't happen overnight, and that the other thing is that I've had people often say, well, it won't happen overnight. And I've said, but actually I did the work when I was freelancing. As you said, Panos, I was doing that work. I've been teaching for 18 years. I didn't just walk up to this 5 minutes ago. I did all of my work experience, so to speak, whilst I was in a role. And that was even like I'd been teaching for years. So I started teaching to teach. Then I freelanced. And then I thought, actually, I want to do this myself. And I'm not going to say it was easy. It wasn't easy. Largely because that fell in with when COVID happened, which was part of the reason I wanted to do it myself, because I thought I can't rely on getting my work from a third party. But of course, it did make it more difficult because other people were doing theirs online. But I still saw that there was people that wanted to do it face to face. Thankfully, because I work for myself, I don't have to get the volume in. And when you work for yourself and there's nobody else involved, you don't have to, I don't have to get those sort of massive sales in. But definitely it is the bit that people don't think about is that if you are going to price higher, you need to, as you said, have that, have that customer base. And we've worked really hard. People say, why do you do your podcast? Do you make money from it? I've had lots of people, though, that have said, I've watched you on LinkedIn. I've seen how you react to things. I read your posts and I see on the podcast and I actually see who you are. And I think that's when what my feeling about it is now is that, no, I won't make the amount of sales that others do. And that's fine because the people that do choose me will choose me because they've seen that it's, like as you said, it's quality. And I think you're not going to appeal. I could reduce my prices, but you know what? I don't think it'd make a difference. It wouldn't actually make a difference because it's not about price.
You know, Marianne, something that we've learned more over the years is that there isn't a single path to success. LearnWorlds now has more than 12,500 students. And I can tell you that we've seen successful trainers who had zero audiences, zero idea, even in some cases, zero idea about marketing. But they had a great niche product, some knowledge on the field, and they started. It took years. It took much more time than they anticipated. It was much more difficult than they anticipated, and they made it in the end. That's not to try to sell to people hope or anything else. What I'm saying is that there isn't a single way of succeeding. If you start with your thought leadership, your branding, your personal brand, your content, and you have an audience, it's so much more certain that you will succeed and you will have something viable in the next few months. But especially during COVID, we had people come to us who were working in a totally different world. They had a yoga studio that was serving a little neighborhood, and they had 30 teaching hours per week, and that was their own scaling horizon. What they were saying is, okay, how can I get my 30 hours per week to become 50 hours per week, and how I can attract people that are not just 15 minutes driving distance from my studio, but are 20 minutes from my studio. And then pushed by COVID in these super extreme conditions under, like, in the center of the sun, with everything happening on top. Some of these people really transform, and they launched an online course, a yoga online course. How unique can it be in even in like 2020's term? It cannot be that unique. But some people started having, a $9.99 yoga course that everybody needed during lockdown, under lockdown conditions, and they went to sleep and they woke up next day and they had a new purchase coming in from Hong Kong, and the next day some new purchase coming in from Sydney. Like this, and these things started to give them a huge potential. That, okay, so they were still desperate to have their yoga studio, go back online, return, hug their students and be close to them. But now, all of a sudden, you have a new channel that is for different people. It doesn't have to be the same, where you can have a $9.99 experience that potentially addresses 8 billion people out there who can buy that 24/7. So it's a different thing. I'm not trying to compare the two. You can have your cake. It's the internet. You can have your cake and eat it too, potentially in some cases. And you can have a cake that sells for $300 because you are doing it with love and attention, and we have a person there and you cook together. And you can have a 99-cent cake that 1,000 people buy because that's what they need at that point.
It's interesting you said that, because I was always very adamant. I love doing the face-to-face, and it's what I love doing. I work best like that. And I've sort of gone from, I guess, I don't want to do the online stuff just because it sort of went against things. And then I was like, I'm going to have to do something to compete, because as I said on a post the other day, whilst people are jumping up and down about AI taking people's jobs, nobody really talks about how much educators lost work. That was not really talked about. People were told to just shut up and get on with it. And actually, it lost, for me, a massive amount of work. But I've now gone on to feeling like you just said, do you know what, actually, two things. If I can offer it via online, it might not be exactly as I'd want to do it, but I'd rather that somebody got it from me than bought it from somebody else who didn't have the passion. But the other side of it is, as you said, for some people, that is the only way they're going to be able to get it.
But also, I think there's another sort of marketing dynamic that fits in here as well, which is that, and that we've had conversations with people who are experts in going viral on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and how that works, right? And the way that all online marketing works these days is you give people what they want, not what you want to give them, right? Because if you give them what they want, they're happy about it, right? And I sense that there's an element where this is true here as well, which is actually you might want to educate people on with about training, or you might want to educate people with a particular course or whatever. But actually, if you bring people into a community, that's a starting point. And one of the ways to get them into that community is when you're talking to them, you say, what is it you need? What is it you'd like to learn? Oh, I'd like to learn about this, right? Then it's about having access to that online that you can sell, right? Whether you've done it or not, but where you can perhaps look over the quality of that and go, actually, I'm happy about that. And if someone's got and this is where accreditations come in. If someone's, got CPD accreditation, for example, that that's met a standard. So you can go, okay, well, I've got a course for you on, I don't know, how to build things out of Lego over here. And you sell them the course and you make a little bit of money out of it. But what you're doing at the same time is you're meeting them where their need is, which means that they're likely to then come in to be into your community because you've met their need. But then you can get to know them.
Where's that trust, isn't it? I mean, I'm seeing there's somebody I met on a I've been to a few sales funnel events, and I sort of sit back, sort of a bit like it's a completely different world for me, because people are selling things for thousands. They're selling, and maybe this is the answer to it in my thinking, they're selling these mastermind things. And I'm sitting there thinking, God, people are handing money hand over fist here. I was seeing somebody selling something for like £400 a month to be part of a community. And I'm thinking, gosh, but actually, this particular person does, she does like events, teaching people about events. So she does the online stuff and she's got a community, but then she does the face-to-face events and people pay hand over fist to go.
Yeah,
they pay loads, and I'm wondering if that's the maybe I've been seeing it all wrong, but I think I came at it different, because I came at it as a teacher, not as somebody selling something.
Marianne, my approach is that we might as well, we are thinking, we are not thoughtful, let's say, about this. So I prefer us to do it. I prefer us to provide some kind of blueprint of what is possible. Really, when we started creating the platform, we were very dissatisfied by the kind of platforms that were out there, like the traditional learning management systems. And there are some amazing tools. I have worked with them also in the academia, back then, the blackboards and the Moodles, and then consuming courses on Udemy or in all these things. And the traditional LMSs, they were there, they were created to please HR, to make HR happy, to have the checkboxes and the reports, and that's it. They couldn't care less about the learner experience. Like some of when we're coming from the commerce side, some of the online course platforms there are amazing on the e-commerce side, on how to have a great checkout experience, all these triggers and all these remarketings, just to get you to add your credit card and buy this $20 course. And that will appeal to many people. Yeah. And they don't care at all about what happens next. So we come in and say, okay, we can compete on the first place. We're great at having you sell something, but don't you also want what that something is to be the best that you can make it, the best thing that you can experience? So this is where we're trying to give to people options, even to people who come from a purely commercial perspective, or who just have some bunch of content and they want to put it out there and they don't understand what learning design is, they never cared. We try to give them some options. Say, okay, can we improve it? Would you like to think a bit more about how you can make this experience that is just a bunch of text or a presentation or a boring linear video? Let's try to make it some more. And not everybody would like that. Some people will just say, okay, this is too difficult for me. I don't care. I just want to sell to somebody a PDF for $999. Like, you can still do that with LearnWorlds, but we would prefer to show you other options and give you more options. And then the market will also vote, I guess, with its choices. And
do you find people are quite open to that? Because, like we said, I do find once I start talking to people, when it goes one of two ways, they'll either appreciate just how difficult it is, and that knowing your stuff isn't enough. I mean, some people don't even know their stuff anyway, and they're trying to put it in. But yeah, I tend to find then, once I speak to people about what's involved, that they either then say, oh God, actually, yes, can you just do the whole lot for me? Or, I'll scaffold it for them, or I'll hold their hand. But as I said, I almost do end up sort of teaching about the teaching and learning process. So you get a bit of 2 for 1 there anyway. But do you find people, or I guess it weeds out the people that you can see just want to be in it for the money, and those that are in it for something else?
They can still do it. You can very much launch an online course.
Do you see the difference?
These are different people who are interested in different things. So how can we cover all of them? And I'm not saying that what we're doing internally with our authoring tools and our experience comes close to the kind of help that you would give, sitting next to somebody and helping them create an amazing experience and everything else. But can we give them some portions of that? For their first course, it might not be important, but then they come back and think, okay, can I improve this? Can I create a more premium version?
Are people quite open to that? Do you find So I think people's perception is that it's easy. I do think we talked about this with Andy yesterday from the CPD group. He said, I think people, because it's been seen quite often as if you do an online course, you can make some extra money on the side, or, you know, so I think people go into it with a completely different perception of what it actually is than what it is. So I would hope then, as you say, if people do it once, they then see that it's quite an enjoyable thing. It's not easy, but actually it's
I will not overpromise here, but first of all, we try to make it super easy, super accessible, you know, to give these options, to say that, okay, it's not like it's science, okay, but we can support you, we can give you some co-pilots and some guidance on the side to help you do more with that. So we try to show how easy it is. And I guess, you know, this is slop, I guess, and everything that comes out of AI is undermining itself. More and more people will try to find more connection and more engagement and more quality. It's like having, you know, it's not the first time that is happening. You have the mass-produced furniture, and then people really start to appreciate the quality in a handcrafted item. It's the same with food. It's the same with these kinds of experiences. So lots of people will be really satisfied with the very most basic stuff that they can get out there, and it's okay. It's a fact of life. For some, a training is just a cost center. They will not think twice. They will just get something to get it over with. Us, in some cases, you might just grab a burger because you don't want to pay attention. But increasingly, more and more people will pay more attention to what they're doing. Why is training important for them? And we believe that in the era of AI, we will need more training rather than less. We will need more caring, more human involvement, more trust, and trust comes by people knowing you and the things that you post and your podcast that you're doing and how you're thinking and saying, okay, I want to emulate that. I want to be like that. I want to be to work with people like that. But there are 8 billion people out there. You know, we're trying to show what is possible, to make it accessible, to give people the affordances to think like that and to understand that creating an online course, there are different layers. I can start with the basic. I can work with an expert to create with an expert instructional designer, and there are also layers in between where I can start, you know, going up the ladder and creating more thoughtful, more engaging, more interactive, more well thought out courses or experiences, hybrid, online, self-paced. It doesn't matter. The things that work for one's market. This is the kind of approach that we're trying to have, kind of an adaptive approach where people, you know, we show them the options and we try to guide them to more high quality experiences, both for themselves in how they approach their business and how they think about themselves as educators, entrepreneurs, creators, and also about their students.
This has been a fantastic conversation today. Thank you.
I think this is, you know, for me, it's changed, you know, over the past month or so, just speaking to do you know what it is? It's speaking to people that have got businesses. So even with the CPD stuff, I was always a little bit negative about that because I'd heard things and I'd seen things as well. And obviously coming from somebody that had offered qualifications, the things I'd heard, and not about the CPD group, were that anybody can sort of get it. And yeah, I still think there's value in qualifications, and I do. You know, whether somebody calls me a snob about it, that's fine. What I will say is it's about meeting a standard. And there are times that a standard is needed. There are times, though, that people, when I say just need to be taught, they don't need to have a qualification. And then I try and explain to people what a qualification actually means. It's a standardized standard that's there. You know, it's not about catching people out. It's, you know, a lot of the time when people are anti-education, and I get why, but when you actually get to the crux of it, it's because they're scared of learning. And I said, but not learning isn't the solution to you. Do you know what I mean? You know, not having a standard isn't a solution because people are scared of learning. It's about actually making that learning more accessible. So I know that if I I can put as many polls out there as I want on LinkedIn. I can put ones about wine on. Lots of people will comment on it. I can put lots of stuff about lots of stuff. The minute I start talking about training and education, it shuts down. And one of the questions I might ask, and I have asked before, is, if you are a trainer and you haven't been educated on how to train, or you haven't got a qualification, why is that? Why is it? Absolute tumbleweed. Nobody wants to talk about it. Oh, I shouldn't have to. And I'm saying, but surely you should want to be demonstrating that you've got that standard. And it doesn't matter what any other sector I compare it to, or industry. People go, well, that's different to teaching. And I say, well, if your child was taught at school by somebody that wasn't qualified, you probably would be jumping up and down. One of the points people make is, oh, well, no, I wouldn't be. The only time I would start being annoyed is if my child wasn't doing well. I said, and there we go. And that's why people knowing what they're doing and being able to demonstrate that they do pays off, because actually being a trainer when everything's going swimmingly well is great if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. The other thing is that you're being a bit hypocritical, because if you're selling something that you're teaching, surely you should be practicing what you preach.
But they probably don't see that, because we live in a time of feedback and experiential experience. Okay, so we live in a time where, like, I might believe that a restaurant is good because somebody on TripAdvisor says it's good, right?
Well, influencers tell people things are good and they go, oh, it's amazing.
But I might then go to that restaurant and go, that was the worst meal I've ever had, right? So then I may add my voice to that, and but we feel like there's an element of transparency in that. But because everything is kind of TripAdvisor now, right? Other platforms are available, right? Because everything is like that. And because we've had that conversation with training companies where nobody's had a training qualification, whatever, they will literally say, if everybody's happy, we're happy, right? If everybody's saying that the experience was good, then we're happy with it, right? So I'm not saying that's right, but I think the psychological path to,
what if it's not? They think, if I'm not getting it, if I'm not being told I'm doing it wrong, I must be doing it right.
Correct. So the psychological path into people accepting that they may need to learn how to train properly has to come from them reaching a place where they feel like they've got a knowledge gap and they want to fill that knowledge gap. And that, I think, only comes with trust. And that is why we've started to reverse engineer this and take it the other way, because actually you've got to meet people where they are. You've got to almost massage their ego, bring them in and say, what is it that you need to learn, etc. Not, I'm going to teach you this. Give them whatever it is they are. Have a conversation with them, talk to them, get to know them, etc. Somewhere along that line, the light bulb will go off and they'll go, I actually could be better at this.
Well, I've written that other program that is there for experienced trainers who, or it may be a training manager or something like that, to fill those gaps. And I know that there's a need for it. I absolutely know there is, which is why I wrote it. And as you said, I think it is that once people, because I've seen other people selling things, I think, how do you do that? When actually there's probably not as much quality there. But yeah, you're right. It's
because they created the need.
And they see it as a sale. If you just sell it, it's seen as a sale. Whereas if they get to know you, you're saying, well, I'm giving you a solution to the fact, surely you want to be better. At that point, they've bought into me, I suppose.
Precisely. And that's how all sales works.
You need to connect it also. You need to connect it with the results. Nobody will just start one day and say, I want to become a better teacher. I want to understand instructional design. It's about what you get out of it. So from our approach, at least from the platform point of view, the kind of technical affordances we create on the platform and the kind of advice and feedback we share from other customers of ours who've been successful, we try to nudge people to test a bit more, create a bit more, and connect the quality of the training with the results that they are getting. And then that can create a positive feedback.
Yeah, and you know what? I genuinely think that comes from being a teacher. And so, Graham, you talk quite a lot about the feedback thing. And I think it's because when you've had to go through that quality assurance process every year, you know, every single cohort I have, I know that I'm going to be looked at. I know at the end of the year, teachers know that they get observed. So it's just second nature that you would be looking at that, particularly when your pay was then dictated by that, and your appraisal was dictated by how your students did. So it wasn't okay for people just to get by. It was that I need them to be good because I'm going to be judged on that. And yes, and I think that's why you're going to do that, and you'll be looking at it like that, because just getting by isn't enough. You know, this isn't about people getting A grades or whatever. It's about people reaching the potential, their own full potential. And I do think that's why there is that difference, that just bunging it out there and people getting through it is never going to be enough for somebody that's an educator.
100%. And I think we just got to learn, we've got to massage people's egos along the way, because ultimately everybody's a selfish person on the planet.
I do love what you're doing, and I just think it's really wonderful that you bought your teaching bit, your computer science, and then making it so that it's accessible for someone like me that is wanting to make a difference, that otherwise wouldn't have afforded to be able to do it. And also, I was talking about this, you know, I've got children. Women often are at a disadvantage if they are the one that's looking after the children. They don't have that much time, but it doesn't mean to say they don't take their business seriously. It just often takes them that little bit longer to get there because they're juggling 50 million other things. Not just women, because men do too, but predominantly, yes. But predominantly it is. And I've heard it where men will think that a woman's not doing it as well, or they're not as serious. They are. They're giving it 110% probably.
I don't want to generalize here, but we have some amazing entrepreneurs, like female entrepreneurs, who really excel at the qualities that are even more important now: the caring, the connection, the attention to detail. So, like, I'm not trying to portray, you know, a black or white picture here, but these are at the premium now. These are even more important than, I don't know, being good at marketing, being good at math, being an extrovert, salesy, super, ambitious and super confident guy. Let's say if we make that a male characteristic, but also bringing, you know, the care, the attention, the connection, that it's going to be even more important the more commoditized content goes through out there. It's going to be even more important. And just another last point from me. It's not just that the teachers will not be satisfied anymore with just cruising and creating a baseline experience. It's even the trainer, the students themselves. A few years ago, in a traditional enterprise, the employee was told this is the kind of certification, compliance, KYC, AML, whatever training you have to go through. You have 2 weeks, you have to go in and do it. Today, what millennial worker will stand for a really bad training experience that, you know, undervalues them as people and as human and as thoughtful persons? They need quality, even in the training that goes to them. So these people come to us now, HR businesses come to us and L&D department saying, help me create something that is beautiful, engaging, consumer grade. Just cruising by with some off-the-shelf content doesn't cut it anymore. People demand quality and attention because they put in their time, which is the most valuable thing that they have. So you have to respect that.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect, look at that, you've hit the hour on the spot. So thank you so much, Panos, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for such a great conversation. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation too on your Friday out there, everybody. Or if you're listening back to this.
I enjoyed it immensely. Thanks, you guys.
If you're listening back on the Spotify or Apple Music or any of those things as well, I hope you've enjoyed it. And we will be back same time, same place next week with more of this. But until then, from Panos, Marianne and myself, thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye.